Alright, so first things first, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to take this photo that I did last night down in Laguna Beach. Um, it wasn't quite fully sunset yet, but either way, I got some good colors, some cloud. I didn't think there would actually be enough clouds out there, but as you can see, kind of up in this little area, there is a cool seagull, not photoshopped, but captured that dude flying around. And yeah, so let's start off. And so far, just looking at the histogram, things look pretty good. So what I usually like to do, bring down the highlights just a little bit, because if you bring them down too much, it looks a little janky. So bring down the highlights, bring up the shadows. I'm shooting on a Sony a7 III, one of my new cameras. I absolutely love this thing. It is a strong performer. Sensor's great. You can lift out these shadows and do everything that you want. If you underexpose, so it's pretty cool. The whites I'm going to bring up just a bit, give that sky some pop. The blacks I'm going to raise just a slight bit. And then I don't usually touch the saturation. Vibrance I don't really touch either. I tend to kind of put these photos that I do as more of a realistic type of vibe. There's occasions where I get a little artistic, if you would like to think of it that way. But as of right now, I'm trying to go for more of the realistic look of what I saw while I was there. So I might throw up a little dehaze and clarity for landscapes. Also for portraits, I tend to just put that down a bit. It gives it a little bit more of like a dream fuzzy look. You can see here, if I drew it like all the way down, I mean, it's completely fuzzy in a lot of areas. But let's just go ahead. I'm going to keep this, let's see, right around 20, and that should be good. Let me just make it exact. And then I'm going to go ahead right here. I'm going to mess around with my curves, and I'm going to mess around here. I'm going to take the blacks up a little bit. Now, you don't need to do too much on these, to be honest with you. It's the more you do, the harder it's going to be to bring it back to something that looks more natural. But, you know, to each their own. A lot of people like to mess with the hues. Occasionally, I'll mess with the blue with the sky. You can see it brings it really turquoise, but again, down at the bottom of the picture in the waves, it does it too. So I'll probably bring that, it wasn't too blue, so I'll bring that to about -7. And then saturation, I also don't really touch. Now, luminance, you can tell it's going to take a lot away. Now, that looks awful. Some people might like it. Again, not my big thing there, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop that a little bit and get this corner up here darker. And then I'm going to go into the highlights. And this is where, just depending on, you know, how I remember this and stuff like that, you know, it wasn't quite this pink, but it also wasn't just basic, so it was more or less this color. It was a nice, vivid, like orange reddish color. So I'm gonna just mess around with these highlights here a little bit, try to get something that matched exactly what it looked like. That looks pretty good to me, honestly. I like that. And then shadows, don't want to mess with these too much because you could start throwing them off and making your photo look pretty bad. But what I'm going to do here, I'm going to throw in a couple orange, bring out the actual orange in the photo that was there. And then sharpening, I'm going to take that completely off because I don't want it. I was shooting on one of my Sony lenses, so the cool thing is I can just do the profile corrections, do a little auto straightening. Now, I don't know if you can see down here at the bottom, but there's a splash of waves, and you know, I don't really like the look of that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go up to the crop and just gonna raise it up a bit, get that out of there, and then scoot it over, and there we go. So personal preference, there's a lot of negative space up here, but this seagull does make it look pretty good. I like the top not having a ton of space. It kind of draws your eye up a little bit more. These clouds are amazing that night. So just a quick little before and after. That was the before. Again, it didn't quite look like that visually in the human eye, but I was able to bring out a little bit more as to what it looked like when I was there. If I wanted to get a little more into it, I mean, I can mess around some more. Let's see. Throw in gradient, and all I'm going to do is, it's auto set on here, but I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to raise the exposure just a slight bit. You don't want to do it too much. If I raise the exposure too much on this, it's going to look extremely fake because the sun is on the other side of these cliffs and these houses, so there's no way that this sand can be that bright when the sun's not directly shining on it. So you got to be careful with that. Again, it's personal preference. So, you know, bumping the exposure helps out a ton. If you really want to, you can take your brush tool, go ahead and brush a little bit. I'm going to put the mask overlay on so I can see what I'm doing. And then you can brush this up, do something kind of crude, you know, nothing too precise, but you do that. And then you go over here and you throw the temperature up, a little bit of the tint up to try to match the sky color. And now you look like you got a nice reflection from the sky. And yeah, I mean, honestly, this photo didn't need too much. I kind of like it the way it is. The seagull, again, was not photoshopped. I saw him flying around coming from this area, the trees, and decided that I wanted to get a shot with him in it and started cranking away. Did a little bit of a spray and pray, but, you know, either way. So yeah, that's kind of a quick little basics as to what I do for photos. Again, each photo takes a different amount of editing. I don't really use presets. I try to edit each one of my photos individually because most of the time the settings and the circumstances are different. And then what I do is when you're done editing your photos, you can have it highlighted down here, and then say I want one of these photos over here to have the same type of settings or style that that one has. So what I'll end up doing is I'll hold down Command on a Mac, and then I'll go over to this sync button. I'll click on sync and it'll bring this up. So I'm just going to synchronize everything on it, and then if I were to go back over to this photo that I had put the settings on from my other one, it's now going to look completely different. Only thing you see as a problem here is you've got some issues on the left because that's where my gradient was, and some other things. So that was before, this is after, but then again, you got to go in, you got to change this and delete it. The brush tool's way over here for some reason, so it's gone. And then I'm basically starting over from scratch. So like I said, each photo is going to be different. You kind of have to take your time, do due diligence, and just figure out, you know, in your process, what do you like the most out of capturing these photos. I mean, I can already tell this photo is super, you know, it's a super good photo, but it's just not doing it for me. So I'll go back through and I'll start looking through a bunch of other photos that I took that night, figure out which one I would like. You know, I was trying to experiment here with some stuff. Looks like I got tons of stuff on my lens. But either way, I mean, yeah, it was a pretty successful night. So once again, here's the photo. That's the before. That's the after. You know, it takes time, but you get used to it. You start learning how to adjust with everything, and there's so much more I could do to fine-tune this, but for now, I really like the way it came out. So I appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully I can get a little more comfortable being in front of the camera and talking, but for now, first time doing this tutorial. Hope you like it. Let me know. Give me a comment, give me a like, a thumbs up, things like that. If you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe to my channel. I'm going to try and do some more stuff here. And also, if you listen to podcasts, I have a podcast out, and just follow me on that. It's on Apple Podcasts. Anchor is one of the main ones. And yeah, follow me on Instagram at Taylor J. Haney, and I'll see you out there. Thanks again for tuning in.